Hello and welcome back. You're watching another Sydney Direct with me, Natalie MacDonald. Monday's Japan GDP figures didn't quite come out as expected. Has Abenomics failed, or as my next guest, Glenn Levine of Moody's Analytics suggests, is this simply the bottom of the cycle? Glenn, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us. Much appreciate it.
Pleasure.
Okay, so Monday's GDP figure did show Japan in recession. Firstly, we must ask, has Abenomics failed here?
I would say it's too early to say, but at this point it's not going well. We're about 2 years into Abe's term, and we would have expected, given the rhetoric and the policy actions, that at this point the economy, well, even if it wasn't doing well, we would at least expect it to be doing less badly, but it's doing really badly. And we're seeing this come out in all sorts of ways. The data have been poor, the sentiment in the business and consumer sector are starting to turn. And so I think the danger at this point is that, given that things aren't going Abe's way, that now he wavers and that he pursues perhaps a different policy path rather than seeing it through to the end. I mean, you probably shouldn't look at the high frequency indicators, the economic data, because it can go up and down and so on. You really want to look through it, but I still think at this stage, no, so far it's not doing too well.
Does this pave the way then for a delay to that second sales tax hike in Tokyo?
Yeah, it does. And so last night the Prime Minister announced that he's going to call an election December 14, and that he will seek a mandate to delay the tax. I mean, the reality is he didn't actually have to do this, and there's all sorts of political ebbs and flows related to it. I mean, he's 2 years into his 4-year term. He could have just, with a stroke of the pen, delayed the tax. He's chosen to go to the voters to try and get their approval. I suspect there's other things going on here. The opposition party, for example, the DPJ, they're very weak right now. So I think he wants to kind of kick them when they're down and get in there. But certainly, absolutely, his first point of order is going to be to delay the sales tax until April 2017, he says.
Now, in a research note on this data, you've commented that sort of one upside almost from this figure is that it's likely to be the bottom end of the cycle. Walk us through then expectations for Japan as you see them.
Sure. So if you dig down into the GDP data a little bit, there was a couple of things that really dragged it down, and they were one-offs. So inventories that corporations hold, they fell a lot over the quarter, and they're going to have to replenish them at some point. So that's going to bounce back in the next couple of quarters, presumably. The other thing is that the residential housing market in Japan, that has been boosted by reconstruction from the 2011 tsunami. That sort of peaked first half of 2014, but now that game is done and that boost is finished, and so we saw a sharp drop through the third quarter. We wouldn't expect to see a similar sharp drop again. So you can take out those one-off factors, we should see a bit of a bounce. But having said that, as I said before, looking through the data, the economy is still weak. So we're not going to see a sharp bounce in fourth quarter growth or into 2015. It's more likely to be a gentle upswing and nothing anywhere near as fast as Abe and his team would be looking for.
Now, we have seen the Japanese yen head sort of into a bit of a free fall, really, and a firming from the Australian dollar. Does this typify this pair's sort of relationship?
I think that cross at the moment is being largely driven entirely on the Japanese side. So the yen, it's fallen almost 10% since the November central bank announcement that they were going to expand and extend their quantitative easing process. The Australian dollar, on the other hand, it's weakening against the US dollar. Everyone's weakening against the US dollar right now, so there's not too much going on there. But certainly, given what the Bank of Japan has done and what their intentions are, it looks as though the yen's probably going to continue to fall at least a little bit more. It's about 117 at the moment, so it's very weak. That's against the US dollar, not against the Aussie cross. So I would expect it to keep going, if anything, lower against the Aussie dollar.
Glenn, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today. Much appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Pleasure.
That Japan outlook certainly adding an extra interesting element to the Asia Pacific picture at the moment. Do stay tuned. I'll be back with plenty more exclusive interviews. For now though, it's goodbye.